How you doing, and welcome to my channel. Now, if it's your first time here, why not hit that subscribe button and keep your eye out for future content. As you can see today, I'm having a look at the Kento Studio 1/6 scale body and clothing set or suit, specifically K003. This suit is designed for one of the suits that Bruce Wayne, aka Christian Bale, is wearing in The Dark Knight Rises. And anybody who has the DX19 or the MMS 595 has this head sculpt, and this is going to be the head sculpt that I'm going to be fitting on the body today. So just having a quick look at what's in the box. You can see on the box there it says Kento Studio. Just having a look inside the box at what we're presented with. You can see obviously we have a sheet of foam there, and then we have a second sheet of foam that's protecting the suit. And we have this bag here with some spare hands in it. And just taking the body out, you can see we have a very well tailored, very nicely tailored suit. Let me just slip this piece of plastic off. There we go. And just what's in the bag there, I'll just show you the spare hands. We obviously have a pair of hands on them that come on the body. And then in the bag we have two more spare relaxed palms, and I'm happy to say that they look quite nice. They're well painted. There's a little hint of redness around the knuckle area, and they look quite nice. And the same with those ones there, quite well detailed, quite well painted, nicely scaled to the body as well. And just like I said, just a little hint of redness around the knuckle area that just adds that little bit of detail and realism to them. Now, as for the head sculpt and the fitment of the head sculpt, you can see we have this head sculpt here, one of the more recent ones, not the most recent one, but one of the more recent ones than the DX12. Now, anybody who has the DX12 head sculpt, I'm happy to report that this, if I can just get it on there, why isn't it fitting on? And there we go. Is it on? It's not quite on fully. There we go, there. That's the job there. Like I said, anybody who has the DX12 head sculpt, I'm happy to report that it fits on no problem. It looks in proportion. He has a neck. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's acceptable. But I'm not a fan of the DX12 head sculpt. I want to fit this more recent head sculpt on, which in my opinion looks 10 times better than the old school DX12 head sculpt. But if you do have the DX12 head sculpt, like I said, no modification needed, fits on and looks absolutely fine. So let me just get this off here without leaving the peg on the body, which I don't think is going to happen. And there we go. Yeah, I've left the peg on. I'm going to have to get a pliers or something and pull that off. And there we go. So just looking at this head sculpt here, and I'll just try and pop this one on and show you what it looks like, kind of standard, you know, unmodified, how it looks on. And you can see immediately off the bat, he has no neck. Anybody who's seen my previous video of the Topo Studio or Topo Studio suit and body set, literally my last video, you know that I had the same issue with the no neck, and I had to modify the head sculpt to make it look in proportion to the suit. And this suit is no different. This Kento Studio one is no different whatsoever. I'm gonna have to modify the head sculpt to make him look like he has a neck. So like I said, anybody who's seen my previous video on the Topo suit knows what I had to do. I had to take the neck piece out, or the peg out of the head sculpt, in order to be able to adjust it to the right height. And I'll show you how I do that in that particular video, and I'll just tell you quickly how I done it. I had to immerse the head sculpt into some quite hot water, almost boiling water, and leave it there for about 10 minutes and get a pliers and pull that piece out. It took a little bit of effort to get it out, but I got it out. I'll put a card up at the end of this video for the previous video, and it'll literally show you how I done it. So like I said, I've had to take this piece out. I'll just pop it in for now, and I'll pop it onto the body. And as you can see, because I've taken that piece out, I can adjust the height of the neck to where where's adequate, and makes things look a bit more in proportion. That's a little bit high. There we go. So that looks far better than the without modifying it. He has no neck at all. So just having a quick look at the suit first, and then what I'll do is I compare it to the Topo one. But just having a quick look at his, just let me move all of this out of the way now, and we'll have a look at his shoes or his footwear in my usual fashion, and we'll start from bottom to top. And here we have his brown shoes or his tan shoes, a nice mold, a nice bit of detail on the front of them there, and a nice relief in all of the mold, some nice detail, and nice mold on the black lace there as well, and just at the side there. Now, compared to the photograph, which I'm gonna put up now, the shoes they're not dark enough. They should be closer to a chocolate brown, as you can see there from the picture that I just put up. But nonetheless, they still do the job. It's not the end of the world that they're not quite accurate. You can see there is a gap there in the shoe where the peg is plugged in. There's a bit of a gap there, unlike the Topo Studio one. It's not the end of the world. He's going to be stood up anyway, and it's all going to be covered up. So, like I said, based on one of the suits he's wearing in The Dark Knight Rises, so it's it's a blue pinstripe suit. It's a blue suit with a blue pinstripe running through it, unlike the Topo Studio one, which is a grey one, which is based on the Dark Knight suit that one of the suits he wears in The Dark Knight when he goes to the conference, where Harvey Dent says at the conference that he's the Batman. But anyway, moving on, blue pinstripe running through it, and you can see that it is a 3-piece suit, just like he mostly wears in the movies. Jacket's lined really nicely. There's no Velcro on it. It's clipped on these little clips here, these little kind of hook clips. You can kind of see them at the sides there, but looking straight on, you can't really see them. He also has a black pleather belt on, which looks the part, and he's wearing a purple tie, which is on point, and a white shirt with a blue pinstripe running through it, which is completely on point for the outfit that it's based on. But it looks really good. The collar is nicely sized as well. The tailoring is really nice on it. You can see the sleeves come down to right where they showed at the wrist. It's a 3-button suit, as he's wearing in the movie. And just looking at the details of the stitching, you can see it's immaculate. It's absolutely, beautifully done. It's stitched quite well. The grouping is quite nice, and the tailoring looks pretty on point to me as well. It looks all in proportion. It looks very good. The collar, as I said, it needs a little bit of foots in there. It doesn't look great right now, but with a bit of foots in it, it'll tuck under the jacket, and like I said, it just have to maneuver a little bit just to get it under the jacket. But that looks decent enough. I'll have to tighten that tie up a little bit. It's just a little bit loose. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap there, but all round it looks beautiful. Just moving around to the back again, all the stitching is all nicely done. It really looks like a shrunk down suit. It's really, really nice. The proportions of the body look good as well. It looks, unlike the Topo one, which the legs were too skinny on, in my opinion, I think this one looks just a bit more in proportion to how Christian Bale looked in the movie. And the trousers are just baggy enough, With if I pull this back, with the exception of the shoes just being a little bit light in colour, it looks quite accurate to how it looked in that scene or in the photograph that I showed you earlier on. So, like I said, it's really, really good looking suit, and it's a great way of utilising a spare head sculpt. I really do like using my spare head sculpts and not just keeping them in the box, So if you have the DX19 or the MMS 595, getting this suit to utilize that head sculpt is an absolute must. So what I'm going to do is grab the Topo one, and we'll just do, you know, a little comparison on the two of them, and I'll just show you the differences in them. So here we have the two suits next to each other, the Topo Studio one on the left and the Kento on the right. And the first thing you're obviously going to notice is that the Topo one is smaller than the Kento Studio one. Some people might say significantly smaller than it. I didn't have a problem with it until I got the Kento Studio one. I didn't have a problem with the smaller one. But I will add that this suit and body is quite old at this stage. It's been out for a number of years, and this one here is last year or early this year, I think. So, you know, there is an age gap between them. So there are, you know, obvious differences to them. I do have his hands in his pockets on the Topo Studio one, and I have the hands in the pockets for a reason, because the hands that Topo Studio provide are absolutely massive. They're so out of scale, it's ridiculous. Like, they're like shovels for hands. So I find the best way to pose them is with the hands in the pockets. I'm just going to have a look at the Kento Studio hand beside it, which looks way smaller. So I'm just going to pop it on there, and I'm going to take advantage of that and use those hands on this body. And that immediately looks way better. I'll just take that hand out of the pocket there, and you can see the difference. You know, the Kento Studio one looks way better. But just for the comparison, I'm going to keep that hand on it just to kind of give a true comparison between them. You can see those hands are massive. But as I said, the Topo Studio one is smaller, and I did have to do the same with that body. Anybody who's seen the previous video knows that I had to do the same with that head sculpt. Literally my previous video, I had to, you know, do the same modification with the head sculpt. I had to take off the little peg that goes inside it and do the same with both of them. Basically, I've had to do the same modification to make them both look in proportion and make it look like he has a neck on both suits. So, you know, so I can adjust them and put them up to the adequate or appropriate height, you know, wherever you would deem necessary to lift it up to, and keeps the head on rather than it just sitting on the peg. It actually keeps the head sculpt on so it doesn't just fall off. As I said, this is the suit that he wears in The Dark Knight. I'll just put a picture up now. When he's packing up the Batcave, when he's clearing all the paperwork with Alfred, and before he goes down to the press conference where Harvey Dent claims that he's Batman and gets arrested, that's the suit he's wearing, you know, in that scene. And this suit here, the Kento one, is based on a scene, I can't remember which scene in The Dark Knight Rises. So they are from two different movies. The shoes I prefer the shoes on the Topo Studio, to be honest with you. They look more accurate colour, and they are detailed slightly better. There's a bit of a wash in them and that, and they do look nicer. Just looking at the size difference there, I couldn't even swap them over because the Kento Studio ones are slightly bigger. So I was considering swapping them over, but they look out of proportion, but rightly so, because the body on the Kento one is bigger. But looking at them there side by side, I'd be inclined to say that the Kento Studio one is a better option. I still do. You still have to do the same modification, although if you do have the DX12 head sculpt, it looks too long on the Topo Studio one, way too long. It looks way disproportionate. So if you have the DX12 and you don't want to do any modifications, the Kento Studio body is definitely the body for you. And to be honest, just looking at the two of them next to each other, it's pretty apparent that the Kento one is from a different era. It's a better tailored and nicer suit in my opinion. You know, broader shoulders, bigger body, and looks way more in proportion. The legs on the Topo one are really skinny, but the tailoring on the Kento one, in my opinion, is slightly better. I'm not saying the Topo one is bad. It still looks well. You can see the arms there are skinnier on the Topo one, and the width of them is back in that is skinnier or thinner on the Topo one. But the stitching is fine on both of them. I don't have any complaints about the stitching on either of them. It's just that the Kento one is more in proportion to the Hot Toys 2.0 bodies, where the Topo one just looks a little bit small compared to the 2.0 bodies. So stay. I'll just stand him there. I'll just grab the DX19 and just put him in the middle there. And he's actually the Kento Studio one. As you can see there, guys, the ankles on the Kento one aren't very strong. That is the downside to him. He doesn't want to really stand up. The ankles on the Topo one are actually tighter, way stronger. In scale wise, the Topo one is more in scale with the DX19, in my opinion. Granted, it's a little bit smaller than the Kento. You know, if he's wearing the boots on the Batman, you know, when he's in the Batsuit, he's wearing the boots, so he should be slightly taller than, you know, a Bruce Wayne. So the Kento one is slightly out of scale, slightly a bit too big. They still stand beside each other fine. It's just that it just looks a bit big. You can see the shoulder line there is much higher. I'll just grab the newer Batman, you know, the newer iteration of the Hot Toys Batman, which is the MMS 702 with the Dark Knight Rises armory. And it is slightly taller than the DX19, slightly broader shoulders. So it does, the Kento one does sit beside the MMS 702 more convincingly. It's still a bit taller than it should be. The DX19 sits in proportion to the Topo, and the Kento sits more in proportion with the latest MMS 702. So it all basically depends on which Batman you have, you know. They still, you know, these two sit beside each other quite nicely, and if you have the DX19, it's probably proportion-wise wiser to get the smaller Topo body and suit, you know. Kind of, like I said, it kind of depends on which one you have. I'll just put the two Batmans beside each other, and you can see that is slightly, ever so slightly taller than the DX19, the newer one, and broader in the shoulders, and he actually has traps unlike the DX19. But looking at the Kento beside him, he's slightly taller, but definitely more in proportion. But it definitely works better with the newer Batman. You can see the shoulder line is just a little bit taller, a little bit higher there. He's kind of roughly around the same height if you include the hair and that. But the shoulder height is way taller on the Kento Studio figure. So, but you know, they still work okay next to each other. They still, you know, they still work with each other. You know. But the Kento is definitely a better figure to stand beside the newer Batman. And just putting it beside the Topo one, it still kind of works. You know, there's not a huge difference, I suppose. You know, it still kind of works. So it's kind of a matter of preference there. But definitely, if you have the DX19, let me just move this over here and play musical chairs with these guys. There is... Again, there's not a whole heap in it, but the shoulder height is way above the DX19. The fact that he has no traps doesn't help. They still kind of work. They all still kind of work with each other, but there is that little bit of difference in them, you know. And I will point out as well, guys, that this particular head sculpt, the new Power Pose Batman head sculpt, it doesn't go on any of them. It has a new design on the peg, and it absolutely does not work on these bodies whatsoever, which is a bit of a shame. I would have loved to have used that head sculpt on one of those bodies, but because that part there, that round piece, that peg hole there, it doesn't go on the ball in those bodies without risking snapping it, basically. So I would have loved to have put that on, but it's not possible. And because it's a plastic piece in there as well, getting that out would be very risky, high risk of breaking it. So it just doesn't work on those bodies, which is a shame. So there you have it, guys, for the Kento Studio body and clothing set for Bruce Wayne's specifically number K003. As I said, if you want to use that head sculpt on it, you do have to do that modification, and I'm going to put a card up in the corner there just to, you know, show you the previous video if you want to have a look at the previous video on how the modification was actually done. Just basically me putting it in hot water and pulling the thing out with pliers. Not major surgery, you know, but if you are interested, take a look at it. But I do think compared to the Topo one, this Kento one is probably the better suit to have. It looks more in proportion and just tailored that little bit nicer in my opinion. The hands are definitely in proportion anyway, and the legs aren't as skinny. The only fault I give this suit set is the shoes. The knee joints are ratcheted. The elbow joints are double jointed, just like the Topo one really. The body's strong enough, just like the Topo one. It's not, you know, extremely loose. It's not hot toy standard, don't get me wrong. It's not hot toy standard, but it's definitely not. It's not wobbling around the place, you know. Head sculpt stays on fine, as you can see there. So yeah, I recommend this one over the Topo one, to be honest. So there you have it, guys. Please do hit that like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and stay tuned for more content. Thank you very much and take care.